Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be doing some winter work to my Austrian pine. Here's a look at the tree. So I repotted it last spring into a new ceramic pot, the first ceramic pot it's had. And yeah, I like the pot with it. It survived the repotting really nicely. I didn't do a lot of work to the tree over the summer because I just wanted it to recover from the repotting process. I've got these two sacrifice branches in the apex of the tree that will eventually be cut off. You can see the big one out the back and one out the front here. And those are to kind of thicken up the trunk and unify the trunk. You can see on the trunk it starts out really nice. And then there's a bit of a bulge in here where there was a whorl of branches. And then it goes kind of a bit skinny up higher. And then it goes a little thicker up higher. And then back to skinny and up to the apex. So I'm trying to grow these sacrifice branches to kind of smooth out the trunk. And it also has another advantage that it takes vigor out of the bottom of the tree. Puts it into the sacrifice branches, so you keep your branching quite fine on the tree. You don't get, huge growth extensions at the bottom or even, up in the top here. All the vigor goes into these sacrifice branches and it maintains a nice kind of silhouette to the tree. It keeps it finely ramified so the growth isn't too vigorous. The root base is getting better and better on this tree all the time. When I initially got this tree many years ago, it had one of the worst root bases I've ever seen on a tree. It was just a tangled knuckle of roots. And I've been working on them for many, many years, sorting them out. I still have one high root here, but I don't want to take it off because it's a nice root. And I'll just pack moss in underneath it so you don't see that gap there. Yeah, I think it's quite acceptable. The bark is getting really nice on the tree. The branch structure gets better and better every year. Yeah, it got to the point where I actually had to start thinning branches. It was getting too dense and too ramified. So I did some thinning. Yeah, it's been a lot of slow development on this tree over the years, but it's coming along nice. It's going to be a nice show tree someday. So my first step for today is, you can see there's a lot of debris and dead pine needles all amongst the branches. So I'm going to clean out the tree as my first step, getting rid of any brown needles, picking out debris that's fallen down into the branches, just a general tidy up. I'm coming in with the tweezers and just picking anything out of the tree. There's debris here. There's some pine needles. And some are just older needles. These pine needles generally last for 2 to 3 years at the most. Then they go brown and die off. So you're always picking out your older needles as the new ones come in and replace them. So there's always some cleanup work you can do. I've got a handful of debris there. So I'll go through the rest of the tree, getting it all cleaned up and ready for the next work. I have gone over the tree, removing all the dead brown needles from the tree. So here's the pile I ended up with taking off after that initial handful. So it's not a whole lot, but you've got to remember all these needles are blocking light to the branches below, so it's a good idea to clean them out. And these piles of dead needles in here, it's a nice place for insects to overwinter, so that's another good reason to clean them out. Plus it gives you a chance to inspect the tree, make sure everything's in good health. So my next step on this tree is to remove the needles from the bottoms of the branches. So this will thin the tree out so you get more light to your lower branches. And The needles that are underneath the branch, if you imagine the sun shining down on the branch, they don't get much light on the bottom here anyway, so it doesn't really change the vigor of the tree too much, removing the lower needles. It kind of just helps lighten up the foliage so more light can pass through to the lower branches. I'm going to start removing the lower needles at the top of the tree. That way your needles fall down and it kind of, there's less cleanup work to do in the end. I'm not going to touch the needles on these sacrifice branches. I want as many needles as possible on them so they grow strong and thick. And eventually I'll cut these sacrifice branches off. I don't know when. I can't give you a timeline because I don't know how long it'll take before they do their work in unifying the trunk thickness and kind of bulking the trunk up. So it could be, you know, next year, it could be 2 years from now, it could be 5 years from now, it could even be 10 years from now. I don't know. I just have to just wait and see, and when it's ready to prune them, that's when they'll get pruned off and it'll be back to a nice looking tree. So here I go, removing the lower needles. So I just come in and cut them off. I don't like to pull the needles off because you can pull the buds off with them. So I like to cut them, just leaving a short little stub on the end of the needles, and that will dry up and fall off as the tree starts to grow. Now at the same time as I'm removing these lower needles, I'm going to thin the needles out also. Here's a look at the end of one of the branches, and you can see all the needles on it. So I want to remove the ones that are back further, leaving only maybe 5 or 6 pairs of needles at the tip of the branch. That exposes this back part of the branch to the sun, and you tend to get more back budding in that area. There's a good example of back budding on this branch. So if you look at that branch, you can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 8 visible buds on the top of that branch in that bare area. So yeah, back budding is definitely a good thing on these pines. It allows you to keep the trees compact and get more branching on them. I'm going to work away on the tree, removing the needles from the bottoms of the branches and taking the needles back, so I just have a small cluster at the tip of each branch. So this operation will take quite a while. I imagine it'll take me the entire afternoon and maybe even into tomorrow. But I'm just going to work away at it slowly and carefully. And when it's done, and we'll come back and have a look at the tree. I'm switching from using scissors to cut the needles off to these leaf cutters. They're ceramic leaf cutters, and these were given to me by Glenn and Angie. I take care of their cats when they're away on vacation, and they bought me this gift. I wasn't sure who it came from, and I finally figured it out. Yeah, so they work really well. You just come in and you snip it, and it cuts the needles off. So here's these ceramic cutters in action. You just come in, snip, snip. They're very sharp and very accurate. They work well. And one of the advantages is you're not holding a heavy tool. As I said, this operation of removing the lower needles and pruning the older ones back takes a long time. So you're holding kind of a heavy tool in your hand for many, many hours, and they get pretty heavy. So these lightweight ceramic leaf cutters work quite well. So thanks, Glenn and Ange. Oh, I hear Joni wanting to come in. Let's see Joni. There's Joni at the door. Come on in, Joni. Hi. Hello. I put Joni's bed on the floor in front of the heater here. You're a good kitty cat, yeah. Oh, what a nice kitty. Yeah. Yeah, you're a good girl. Okay, you have a nap. I'll just be pruning away on pine needles. Here is a progress report. It's many hours later. I'm still working away at the needles. So here's what I've taken off so far. Lots of needles, and you can see under the branches it's a lot cleaner now. You can see the structure of the branches more. So that opens it up so you can see what you need to prune. I still have some work to go. I'm still working away at the needles, thinning it. And you can use, if you want a branch to thicken up, you can leave more needles on the branch. So the lower branches, they're a little weaker, so I keep more needles on those. And as I go up the tree, I thin them even more. Now I did do a little bit of thinning on the sacrifice branches. There were some old needles on this part, and I didn't want it shading out the good branches below. So I kind of cleaned up the base of the sacrifice branches so they're not shading out my good branches. Yeah, but it's coming along. Making progress. I still have, I'd say I'm probably 80% there. So I'll keep working away. The light is still good so far. The sun's still up there, so I got a couple more hours to go at least. I'm getting into the final kind of detail pruning, or I'm making sure every bud has light, thinning it all out so you can see the branch structure a lot more now. It's really opening the tree up. And it's taking a long time, but you know, the results are always worth it. It's nice to be able to work on your trees slowly and carefully. So I'm definitely going to have to go into day 2 with this tree. I haven't done any pruning yet, but I will. So the difference between a clip and grow pine and wiring a pine is that on a clip and grow you're always looking for buds on the bottoms of the branches to create new leaders like this one, and then you prune away your upwards growth. Whereas if you're wiring it, you prune away all these bottom buds and then wire the top down to make it flat. So it's just a different approach. Both work well. I prefer the clip and grow. I think it gives you a little more natural looking tree because you're not positioning every branch exactly where you think it should be. They kind of grow naturally in a more random pattern. You end up with some nice looking branches on your tree. There may come a point on this pine where I do have to put some guy wires in some of the branches and just ease them down a bit, but so far, you know, after many years, the clip and grow is working quite well. It's making a nice looking tree. Yeah, so I'm going to continue the work into day 2. I don't want to rush it. The light is starting to fade. You can see the sun has gone somewhere behind the clouds, and it's getting kind of dark to work in the interior of the pine. It's getting a little harder to see, and I've got a lot of work to go. I I said before I was like 80% done, but I think I was closer to 50% done. Yeah, so it's the kind of thing, you know, the more needles you remove, the more you see the branch structure, and the more you see needles that need to be removed to get more light to all the buds. But it's coming along nice. I've got quite a pile of needles now. Yeah, all over the floor too. So we'll be back onto the Austrian Pine in day 2. Here's a final look after the first day's work on my Austrian Pine. Yeah, it's definitely opened it up, thinned it out. And yeah, after I'm done all this work, thinning it, then some pruning, it'll be ready for spring. I really enjoyed working on my Austrian Pine today, getting the needles thinned out, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow where I'll actually start the branch pruning. So I will see you tomorrow morning. It is the next day now. The temperature is minus 17 degrees Celsius outside. It's pretty cold. In the greenhouse here, it is just above freezing. Here's the temperature. So it's like 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Pretty cold, but not bad, considering how cold it is outside. So I'll be back to work on the Austrian Pine today. More needle thinning, and then I'll do the final pruning. It looks like we might get a sunny day today, which would sure help warm the greenhouse up. Make it a little nicer working on the tree out here. I was needle thinning the Austrian Pine the other day, and I was using those ceramic leaf cutters. The only problem I found with those is that you have to get in fairly close, and the tips of the needles kind of prick your fingers, and my hands were really itchy for about an hour after I finished yesterday. So I'm going back to my long-handled scissors so I don't have to have the pine needles prickle my fingers. So back to work I go, needle thinning the Austrian Pine. I've been working away thinning the needles, and they might need a little more, but it's getting pretty close. I can see all the branch structure now. So I think I'm going to begin pruning. You can see there's a lot of branches in here that are just going like the wrong direction. Some can be shortened. I left this branch grow long this year to thicken it up a bit. It was a little on the slim side. Yeah, I think it's time to begin pruning. So again, I'm looking for branches on the bottom, keeping those, and pruning off the ones that are going upwards to create a nice kind of flat pine structure to the branches. You can see there's a shoot here that's sticking way up. It can be pruned. There are a few branches last year that I didn't prune because I needed some of these bottom ones to strengthen up. So this year I can prune those back. And I'm looking to divide each branch from 1 to 2. You can see on this branch I pruned the tip, and then there's a whole cluster of branches coming off. So that can be thinned out, restructured. Yeah, so it'll just be a matter of looking at each branch, following it from the base of the tree out, and pruning it up for structure and form. I'm trying to keep my branches, growing in a good direction, so they're not crossing back or going 90 degrees to the branch. Trying to get some fairly flowing branches. Yeah, they won't be flowing like a maple tree, but you still want them sorted. You don't want branches going back in towards the center of the tree, and try and keep some kind of a nice flow to the branches. So I will get pruning now. That'll be exciting. All right, so let's see what I have here. I have a branch going quite vertical here, and I have one that's fanning out more, so I can at least prune this vertical part away, and I will. So here I go, taking that off. Here's another vertical branch, and I have better ones below, so I'm taking that one off. That's coming off. And again, I'm always looking to divide from 1 to 2. Not having clusters of branches, which will create kind of ugly knobs on your branches. Instead of having nice flowing branches, you'll end up with very knobbly looking branches that just don't look very miniature. There's a stub I can take off here. I'm going to remove this branch way back here. Well, no. I'll take the middle one out. Just to open that branch up a bit, it was getting too congested. Too many buds. Now I do have a bud on the bottom here, which is really nice. So it's possible I could take this whole top off this branch. I think that would help the branch and develop this bud on the bottom. So I will. So big cut coming up. Here I go. Taking that branch off. And I think this one will also have to come off. It's attached to that same stub like that. And then I've got to take it back. Take my kind of stubs back to make a clean transition to those new branches. Like that. That simplifies that branch tip and gets rid of the upright growth and keeps my buds pointing downwards. Now on this branch, I still have some divisions here. I've got it dividing. There's a couple of buds on the bottom. There's one here. And I said I'd need to develop that bud before I prune this upright one off. But I think there's enough growth on this branch that I could take that one off. I've got this one, got some buds here, so I'm going to remove it. So here I go, another big cut. Taking that off. This branch is looking quite nice. This part of the branch is growing quite upright, and I have better branches here, so I will take off that branch. Taking that off there. I've got one sticking straight up here. I'm going to remove that one. Like that. And then on this branch, I do have a bud down lower, but that has to develop before I can prune that one. I've got a bunch of branches back here that are quite... There's a lot of opposite branches, so I need to take some out. I'll take this one on the inside of a curve off. Like that. That clears up a lot of space there. And I've got some buds in close to the branch, and I have a long one here that is starting to grow over top of another branch. So I think I'm going to take that one off. Taking that one off. On this branch, you can see I have a good branch out the bottom here, and it divides from 1 to 3. So I'll take my upright one off here, like that. Take that stub back a bit more, like that. So that divides from 1 to 2. And then I have a branch back here that kind of, well, I've got a vertical one I can remove. Take that out. That clears up a lot of space so I can see what's going on below. I've got a vertical one here I'm going to remove, like that. This branch kind of turns back in towards the center of the tree here. And I have a more flowing branch here. So I think this is a case of removing a more mature branch and replacing it with one going a better direction. So here I go, another big cut. Taking that off, improving the flow of my branches so they're coming radiating out from the tree rather than curling back in towards the trunk. So you can pretty well follow the same plan you'd use on deciduous branches. Looking for flow lines, branches that are growing straight up can be removed, like this one. Branches growing back in towards the center can be removed, like that one. I'll work away pruning up all the other branches on the Austrian pine, and then we'll come back and have a look at it when it's ready for spring, which seems quite far away. I have finished the pruning on the Austrian pine. So I did a lot of cleanup in the apex here. You can see this is my sacrifice branch, and there's all kinds of branches coming off of it that I pruned away. So eventually I can just make a clean cut removing it. The other sacrifice branch, it has a lot of good growth at the base of it that I'm going to keep, and this will get pruned off probably here eventually. Taking that end off. Yeah, so I prepared that area for the day where the sacrifice branches will come off and it'll look like a normal tree once again without that great big top on it. Here's a look at the branches I pruned off. So quite a few, you know, some fairly thick ones. Yeah, lots of branch tips came off, improving the structure slowly and carefully over the years. Well, here is a look at the tree, but you can't see it very well because it's kind of dark in the greenhouse with snow on the roof and the bright background. I'll try and put it outside and we'll have a look at it in the sunlight. Here's a look at the Austrian pine outside. I don't know if you can see it any better, but yeah, it's looking a lot sparser. The branches are pruned up much better. They're looking quite good. Yeah, it's hard to get a good shot of it in this light, but there it is on the bench. My Austrian pine looks a little sparse at the moment, but it always does after this operation, needle thinning and pruning. But I find by midsummer it fills out really nicely and starts to look quite awesome. So it's really cold out here today. I'll be glad to go inside and edit the video where it's a little warmer than out here. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.